noticed that I go back to the same technique a lot, breathing technique. Like I count my breath 4 in, and I hold for 7, and then exhale for 8.
Okay.
But I'm getting kind of bored of it, to be honest. So I just kind of wanted your advice on what are other go-to methods for
Great question.
calmer.
There's so many, we're talking about a 2,600-year-old tradition that went, one of these days I'm going to make the actual list of the countries and nation states that the Dharma went through. But the short list is India, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, China, Korea, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Burma, of course, Japan, Korea, the US, UK, Australia, everywhere else. But even in Burma, there's like 64 primary mindfulness of breathing techniques. Even in the suttas, the historical Buddha taught for 49 years, endless amounts of techniques, all the way from stop being such a jerk all the time to really elaborate conceptual ways of opening into the emptiness of the present moment. But just speaking about breath generally, there's all these techniques, but the 3 main approaches to breathing are just being present to the sensations arising with the breath, number 1. And that includes, anything where you're not on purpose paying attention to a specific sensation in the breath. But I'm just going to sit and breathe. And I'm just going to pay attention to how the breath feels. And when I start thinking about fun dip, or what was I thinking about when I should have been meditating earlier today? Oh, my neighbors, and how loud they are when they come in and out the door. When I catch myself doing that, I just notice it. And I relax. And I come back to just noticing the sensations of breath. So that could very easily just be called mindfulness of breathing. Another really common one involving the breath is noting the breath, which is just simply when you notice you're breathing in, mentally say in. When you notice you're breathing out, mentally say out. Full stop. And the same as before, when you notice that you're thinking about something else. And this isn't a problem. You didn't fail. It's not a bummer. You're not a bad meditator. Noticing that you're doing something else is a tremendous victory. This is uncontrived, unfabricated mindfulness. It just happened. You were thinking about lasagna, and then you noticed you were thinking about lasagna. And that's huge. Not only out there, but in here. Especially out there. Because lots of times you don't know you're angry until the fist is flying past your face, or driving too fast, or shutting down and closing off to your partner or the person on the street or whatever. So, noticing the in-breath, noticing the out-breath, and then when you notice you're doing something else, notice that. And then you have a moment of complete freedom. What do you want to do now? If your intention is to note the breath, then come home. Come back to the breath. The third most common around the breath is counting. And instead of making the breath do a thing, or holding the breath, which is very common in the yogic techniques, the bandhas, the locks, like holding the breath. Instead of doing that, you just breathe like normal, but when you notice an exhale, you just go, 1. In, out, notice the second exhale, 2. And you just count exhales all the way up to 8. Start over at 1. And there's, some people go up to 10 and go back down to 1. Some people, there's all kinds of variations. But I feel like 8's a good number. It's a common number. And again, when you notice you're doing something else, notice that. And then come home if you want to. Come back to counting the breath. You'll notice that, just briefly, the technique that you mentioned, while being profoundly neurologically soothing, and it is, pranayama, bandhas, all these different yogic techniques or modern neuroscience that look like yogic breathing techniques. They're profoundly useful therapeutically. But in the final analysis, that's not what we're training. This guy wants us to train to return to this luminous, unbounded, vast awareness that we are. And we don't do that by making the breath do a thing. We do that by noticing what the breath is already doing. It's very soft. It's very receptive. And we're just noticing. Don't get me wrong, taking deep breaths, doing box breathing, whatever technique, Andrew Weil's technique, these are great. And especially good if you don't want to scream at your boss or whatever. But in Buddhist meditation practice, the emphasis is watching. I'm not making anything happen. I'm just watching what's happening.